The morning that changed everything. At exactly 6:47 a.m. on a crisp Monday, the tranquil cul-de-sac I called home was shattered by a roar so fierce it sent sparrows and robins scattering from the oaks lining the street. A candy apple-red Lamborghini Aventador screeched to a dramatic halt, its exhaust bellowing like a dragon amplified by a megaphone, parking directly across my driveway gate. I, Darren Miller, a former military engineer who cherished solitude and the hum of well-tuned machines, stood frozen at my bedroom window, toothbrush dangling from my mouth, toothpaste dribbling onto my chin. Through the glass, I watched in disbelief as the driver emerged, a platinum blonde woman in sleek designer workout gear, a hot pink windbreaker screaming for attention. Karen. She flicked her oversized sunglasses down her nose, unrolled a yoga mat on my side of the sidewalk, and positioned her phone at a meticulously calculated angle. Her voice pierced the morning air, loud enough to rattle my window panes. Welcome back to Mindset with Karen. Today, we're claiming space, not just emotionally, not just spiritually, but physically. And yes, that includes parking wherever the hell we want. I choked on my toothpaste, the mini foam burning my throat. My name's Darren, a quiet guy who lived on the edge of a small suburban neighborhood, just beyond the official boundary of the Homeowners Association, or so I'd believed until recently. My days were spent tinkering with restored machinery, savoring the silence of my property, and avoiding meddlesome neighbors. Karen's recent crusade to extend her self-proclaimed HOA dominion into my life had been a growing irritation, but this morning's stunt was a new level of audacity. I had a job interview in exactly 90 minutes at Atlas Defense Systems, a prestigious company specializing in national security technology. I'd spent 3 weeks preparing, studying their contracts, memorizing technical specs, and rehearsing answers to every conceivable question. Atlas valued structure, punctuality, and precision, qualities I'd honed in the military. Now, Karen's $300,000 rolling ego trip, with its personalized license plate reading QN Karen, had turned my driveway into her personal stage, threatening to derail everything. I threw on jeans and a faded t-shirt, grabbed my briefcase, and marched down the gravel path to confront her. The morning air was cool, but my blood was already simmering. Karen turned as I approached, her smile so artificial it could have been molded from plastic. Morning, Darren. Love the flannel, country chic, she chirped, her tone dripping with condescension. You're blocking my driveway, I said, stopping just shy of the Lamborghini's gleaming side mirror. I have somewhere to be. She stretched her arms skyward in a theatrical yoga pose, as if she hadn't heard me. HOA guidelines clearly state that communal access lanes are not private property during community hours, she said, her voice casual but edged with triumph. I blinked, my grip tightening on the briefcase. Community hours? That's not a real thing. She shrugged, adjusting her mat. It is now. Passed it last Thursday. We voted. You and who? Your cat. Karen gasped, clutching her chest like I'd insulted royalty. That's rude. Mr. Whiskers is our treasurer. The vein in my forehead pulsed, a familiar warning sign from my military days when patience was tested beyond reason. I knew better than to escalate. Karen wasn't just oblivious to boundaries. She understood them perfectly and redrew them to suit her whims, like a queen mapping her kingdom. Just last week, she'd posted signs at the community entrance proclaiming the street Karen's cul-de-sac, HOA President Forever. Some neighbors chuckled, thinking it was a joke. I knew it was a declaration of war. Now, her car was a deliberate barricade, a power play designed to assert her dominance. Karen, I said, my voice low and steady. I'm telling you right now, move the car, or I'll find another way out. She narrowed her eyes, sipping green juice through a stainless steel straw. Is that a threat? I forced a polite smile. Not yet. The cost of powerlessness. Back inside, I dialed the local non-emergency line, hoping for a quick resolution. The dispatcher's voice was sympathetic but unyielding. Since the car's not abandoned and your property's on the edge of an HOA zone, it could take hours for a response, she said. The word, hours, hung in the air like a stale fog. My interview was at 8:17 a.m. sharp. By 9:15, I'd missed it, my call to Atlas Defense Systems going straight to voicemail. I stood at my gate, watching Karen and her yoga crew pack up their mats, laughing as if my ruined morning was a punchline. One of her followers pointed at my house, whispering behind oversized sunglasses. Karen cackled, pulled out her phone, and started filming another video. Today, we're talking about boundaries, she said, her voice saccharine, and how some people need to learn to share the view. My hands trembled, not from anger, but from the pressure of powerlessness, a sensation I thought I'd left behind on the battlefield. In the military, we had command, precision, action. Here, I was trapped by bureaucracy, falsified rules, and a Lamborghini that screamed entitlement. I glanced across my yard to the barn, not just any barn, but a sanctuary for my collection of restored machinery. Among them was my pride and joy, a fully restored, street-legal M60 Patton armored tank, decommissioned but meticulously maintained, capable of crossing uneven terrain with ease. The thought flickered in my mind, tempting but reckless. I wasn't there yet. Not yet. The HOA's escalation. Later that day, I found a glittery pink envelope taped to my fence post, its laminated contents reeking of Karen's performative flair. The letter from the HLA, a typo for HOA, naturally, cited me for potential code violations concerning unauthorized gate barriers, visual obstructions, and lack of community compliance. Signed by Karen in purple gel pen with a small heart, it ended with, "Consider this a friendly warning before formal action." Formal action? I hadn't even signed the HOA charter. Digging into the bylaws, I discovered a recent amendment. The community zone had been reevaluated, and a new map submitted to the county office. A red line now looped awkwardly around my property, like someone had spilled wine on a blueprint. Karen had extended her kingdom with a crayon and dared the world to stop her. I drove to the county building the next morning, my jaw tight. A young clerk with a mug reading, "Keep calm" and stamp forms, greeted me with a yawn. I explained the situation, Karen's fraudulent map, the Lamborghini incident, the glittery citations. She typed, blinked, frowned, then leaned in. "That map was submitted by a Karen Blakely," she said, "attached to a temporary land annex request. Those usually take months to approve, but this was fast-tracked with a handwritten note. I asked who approved it. She raised an eyebrow. Says, see attached, but there's no attachment. That's odd. Odd didn't cover it. Fraudulent filings, DIY legal lines, and citations delivered in sparkly envelopes. Karen wasn't just an entitled neighbor. She was running a full-blown HOA dictatorship with no checks or balances. That night, I walked into my barn. The tank sat silent in the center, a relic of a different kind of war, its steel hull gleaming under the fluorescent lights. It didn't look old to me. It looked ready. For the first time in weeks, so did I. Karen wanted a kingdom? She was about to learn that some castles come with catapults, and mine had treads. Claiming territory. The next morning, the cul-de-sac was unnaturally quiet, the air heavy with anticipation. Karen's Lamborghini was gone, but in its place stood a wooden signpost at the edge of my property, freshly planted. HOA expansion zone. Future development considerations site. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. She wasn't just redrawing maps, she was planting physical markers, playing real-life Monopoly with my land. I yanked the sign out, roots and all, and tossed it to the curb. Before I could make it back to the porch, Karen appeared, hands on hips, flanked by two clipboard-wielding men in khakis and tucked-in polos. One wore a badge reading Community Officer Trenton, the other, a sour-faced man with a comb-over and oversized sunglasses, nodded like he was documenting my every breath. "That's destruction of HOA property, Darren," Karen said, her voice sharp. Very bold for someone with two pending citations. I took a step closer, enough to make her flinch. "This isn't HOA property. My deed predates your power trip. Until a court says otherwise, that sign's trash." Trenton coughed, his confidence wobbling. "We're just verifying easement boundaries. Nothing confrontational." Karen rolled her eyes. "Stop being spineless, Trent." The other guy snapped photos of my gate, as if it were a rare artifact. I needed allies. I found Mitch, a quiet neighbor 2 blocks over, trimming his hedges. He'd once been cited for a garden gnome deemed too close to the HOA's visual perimeter. When I mentioned the map, he snorted. "She did it to the Jacksons, claimed their koi pond was a community hazard and filled it with cement. They moved 2 months later." He paused, then added, 2 years ago, a guy named Phil threatened to sue her for misusing HOA funds. Next day, his fence was culturally offensive, and she called animal control on his cat. Haven't seen him since. Karen didn't just enjoy control, she weaponized rules, using citations like grenades and bylaws like barbed wire. She didn't want peace, she wanted submission. The inspection gamut. A new letter arrived, printed on premium lavender scented stock. Notice of emergency inspection. HOA Community Preservation Team will enter property for fire safety assessment. Time, 4 p.m. today. I glanced at the clock, 3:52. They'd planned this. I bolted to the barn, threw open the doors, and let the tank's polished steel catch the afternoon sun. Karen arrived with her goons and a tall man in a vest labeled Fire Risk Evaluator, clutching a clipboard like a scepter. She smiled like she was hosting a reality show. Darren, we just need to ensure this barn isn't a combustible threat to the community. The evaluator stepped inside, paused, and stared at the tank. Is that real? Restored M60, I said. Street legal. Part of a historic preservation initiative. He blinked. That's extremely cool. Karen's face twitched. It's not HOA approved. It's loud, obstructive. Trenton, hovering behind her, mumbled he didn't file for a parking variance. I handed the evaluator a folder. State Historic Registry, insurance, legal clearance, even a congressman's letter from a Veterans Month photo op. He flipped through it, expression unreadable. Karen buzzed like a mosquito, trying to reclaim authority. Finally, he spoke. Legally, he's not only permitted to house it, he's protected under Section 18B of the county zoning code. Karen looked like she'd been unplugged from the Matrix. What? He can just have a tank. I crossed my arm. The surveillance plot. That evening, I spotted an HOA security camera on a tree, wired to monitor my barn, disguised as a bird-watching project. Karen was building a narrative to paint me as unstable, dangerous, a menace. I couldn't let her control the story. I posted online about the tank's restoration, inviting veterans and history enthusiasts for weekend tours. I partnered with a local high school shop teacher for technical walkthroughs. The narrative became mine. The next morning, Karen's Lamborghini parked just shy of my gate, a passive-aggressive taunt. She stepped out, glanced at the tank, then at me on my porch, sipping coffee. This isn't over, Darren. I know, I said, smiling. That's what makes it fun. She scoffed, striding off in a cloud of perfume, but I knew she was planning something louder. Hashtag the HOA's public relations war. The air grew heavy, like the calm before a storm. A plain envelope with a gold HOA seal was taped to my garage door, a summons to a conflict resolution hearing accusing me of intimidating displays of weaponized equipment, endangering communal mental peace, and absurdly, excessive patriotic posturing. Co-signed by Brock Hensley, Karen's third cousin, who wasn't a lawyer but had taken an online legal workshop. At the county office, a stone-faced supervisor named Harris confirmed the HOA couldn't govern my exempt property. That's illegal, he said. If they move forward, it'll backfire. Karen announced a driveway yoga event on my property, using my tank as a backdrop with the caption "Inner Peace Amongst Iron Giants." She rented stages, speakers, and inflatable flamingos with HOA funds. I set up a legal notice board, Federal Registry Historical Zone. No trespassing. Motion sensors caught her nephew posing on the tank for TikTok and Karen sneaking near the ignition compartment, whispering, "Why is he not scared? He's supposed to be scared." The showdown at the yoga event. The event arrived like a circus. Karen, in a pastel workout set, preached peace on a mini stage. I flipped the tank's ignition, its roar slicing through her speech. I drove it to my property line, parked, and stood beside it, arms crossed. Cameras turned from Karen to me. Influencers fled. A county official announced Karen's suspension for illegal zoning, surveillance, and fund misuse. She walked away, her entourage scattering like startled geese. The final reckoning. Karen's retaliation was swift. A community disruption notification cited my tank as an urban psychological hazard, with a blurry photo and her handwritten notes. She went door to door, claiming I planned to use the tank at an HOA meeting. A neighbor recorded her at a Keeping Our Streets Safe wine mixer, where she called tanks trauma triggers. I sent the footage and my permits to the local paper. The headline read, "Suburban man targeted for owning restored military vehicle." Public sentiment shifted. Neighbors offered support, one saying, "I've always wanted to sit in that thing." Karen tried one last move, calling a tow truck to remove the tank, yelling about community aesthetics. I recorded her. "Say that again," I said. She backtracked, claiming she wanted a tour, but my cameras caught her trespassing near the tank. I filed a sheriff's report for tampering with historical equipment. The next morning, the HOA group chat erupted. "Why was our president trying to tow a resident's property?" One posted. Another shared a meme. Karen with crystals, captioned, "HOA versus history." Evelyn, an elderly neighbor whose husband was a tank mechanic, handed me a petition with 18 signatures calling for Karen's removal. My husband would have loved that beast, she said, winking. The HOA meeting. The emergency HOA meeting drew a crowd. Karen's speech about visual harmony faltered as I stepped forward. My friend Carlos drove the tank slowly down the street, a banner reading historical artifact, proudly protected, fully legal. The crowd laughed, applauded, and snapped photos. A county official outlined Karen's violations: fund misuse, illegal maps, unauthorized surveillance. She was suspended, her decisions nullified. She walked away, defeated, her entourage scattering. I took the microphone. I never wanted a fight, I said. I just wanted my driveway back. The crowd stayed, sharing HOA horror stories, asking about the tank. Later, a basket appeared on my porch, a toy Lamborghini, a plastic tank, wine, and a note. Next time, just run it over. The new normal. Karen resigned. Evelyn became HOA president, banning activity near non-members' properties and rewriting bylaws in plain English. Atlas Defense Systems called, impressed by my Suburban war zone handling. I started teaching kids mechanics. The tank parked proudly by the barn. It wasn't just a machine, it was a symbol of boundaries, respect, and a line you don't cross unless you're ready for the consequences. Karen's worst nightmare wasn't destruction, it was irrelevance. And she was, finally, completely irrelevant.